What if the sentence you thought was rejection was actually the first proof he was terrified of losing you? You've heard it before. You replayed it in your mind like a punishment. It arrived like a cold blade against your heart, slicing through your hope in one motion. I don't want to hurt you. The sentence that made your stomach sink, the sentence that made you question your worth, the sentence that made you whisper to yourself at 2:43 a.m s. If he cared about me, why would he say that? Women don't break when a man leaves. They break when he stands in front of them, holds their face in both hands, and says he isn't good for them. Because rejection from strangers is easy. It's the rejection wrapped in tenderness that hurts the most. You didn't cry because he vanished. You cried because he stayed, just long enough to make you believe he wanted you, only to pull away when you reached for something deeper. That's the paradox every woman in love is forced to solve. When he becomes emotionally close, that is when he becomes emotionally afraid. You think he is choosing distance, but in truth, he is protecting the most fragile part of himself, the part that could belong to you. Let me take you back in time, before texting and dating apps, before games and cold ghosts and mixed signals, to a world where love wasn't expressed loudly, but carried in restraint. Queen Victoria met Prince Albert at a time when her entire life was surveillance, formality, duty. And yet, when she saw him, she didn't write, "Hey is perfect." She wrote, "I felt something I could not explain, something that frightened me." Albert was quiet, not the charismatic kind of man who impresses a room with his words, but the type of man whose silence holds a storm behind his ribs. He didn't know how to say, "I'm falling in love with you." He showed his fear instead. He hesitated. He held back. He worried he was too young, too inexperienced, too unpolished to love a queen. Imagine the irony, a queen terrified to love, and a prince terrified to love her back. That is the masculine heart full of desire, disguised as restraint. You call it pulling away. He calls it, "I need to get this right." You interpret it as rejection. He experiences it as responsibility, because when a man falls, he doesn't think about how beautiful the connection is. He thinks about every possible way he could ruin it. Women fall first into emotion. Men fall first into consequence. That is why the sentence, "I don't want to hurt you," is not a dismissal. It is the closest he will ever get to admitting he cares too deeply. A man who doesn't care will never warn you. He will never slow down. He will never look troubled as he says your name. He will never hesitate when you try to love him. A man who doesn't care if he hurts you. The man who says, "I don't want to hurt you," has already imagined your tears. He has already imagined the moment you walk away. He has already pictured your silence and how he will hate himself for causing it. Women expect love to make men strong. But in reality, love makes men collapse in the one place they are never trained to be weak, their emotional core. Men can fight armies. Men can endure war. Men can lose their wealth, their sleep, their status, and still breathe. But one woman looking at them with vulnerability in her eyes. That is the battlefield where every masculine armor shatters. We learn this in history through Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of restraint, the philosopher king. His letters were not filled with poetry or desire. They were filled with fear of failing the people he loved. He wrote not because he didn't feel, but because feeling terrified him. Love was not an escape for Marcus. Love was responsibility. And responsibility always breeds panic into the masculine. So why do men respond to love with distance? Because feminine emotion is oxygen and masculine identity has always been steel. When oxygen meets steel, it rusts slowly, quietly, until one day it breaks. He knows this instinctively. He has seen other men fall apart. He has seen heartbreak weaken warriors. He has seen his own friends drift into chaos after giving their heart to the wrong woman. So when he feels the gravity of your presence, he does something that makes no sense to you. He pulls back, not because he doesn't want you, but because he doesn't know how to survive you. Let me tell you something that most women never understand until too late. Men don't run from women. They run from the emotions women awaken. If you were just another body, another casual fling, another charming distraction, he would lean in. Physicality is safe. Flirting is safe. Casual attention is safe. Even sex is safe. But intimacy, the real thing, the world-shaking, soul-expanding, ego-killing intimacy, that is the lion. And when he sees the lion, he does what every untrained warrior does. He retreats. This is why the men who fall hardest are the men who stay quietest. They speak less. They confess less. They reveal less. Because they know if they open their mouths, the river will flood and drown them both. It is not weakness. It is emotional shock. Think about Napoleon. He conquered nations. He walked into gunfire. He commanded armies. But when he wrote to Josephine, a woman who could destroy him with a single glance, he wrote like a prisoner of his own heart. His letters were desperate, then silent, then explosive again, then distant, then obsessive once more. Love does not make men consistent. It makes them human. When a man is addicted to his independence, he doesn't fear loneliness. He fears connection. Because connection is where performance ends and vulnerability begins. When he touches you, kisses you, sleeps beside you, he isn't afraid. The body is simple, instinctual, predictable. But when he hears your laugh and it feels like home in his bones, when he sees your eyes and every plan he ever had rearranges itself, when he knows he could lose himself in you. That is the danger. Love is the only weapon strong enough to make a man surrender willingly. So what does he do? He steps back. He withdraws. He becomes cold. He turns into someone unrecognizable. Not because he is rejecting you, but because he is protecting himself from the parts of himself he never knew existed until you. You think, did I do something wrong? No. You did something far worse. You mattered. And here is the irony. What you read as absence is often his attempt at preparation. Men are architects of certainty. They do not confess love until they believe they can stand on it. So the moment a man begins to love you, he will check himself against every possible failure. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't keep her? What if she finds someone better? What if I break her heart? What if I reveal my weakness and she loses interest? This is why men who are casually infatuated act bold, playful, effortless. But the men who are truly invested, their hands shake, their voice softens, their eyes avoid. That is not distance, that is reverence. Do you know why Prince Albert was so cautious with Victoria? Because to him, she wasn't just a woman, she was destiny. If he failed her, he didn't just lose a lover, he lost himself. Men do not fear women. They fear identity loss. And the moment you walked into his life, he realized something terrifying. His identity was no longer just his own. That is how masculine love begins. Not with fireworks, not with grand declarations, not with certainty. It begins with a crack in the armor, a shaky voice, an unfinished sentence, a breath he can't quite escape. It begins with, I don't want to hurt you. What he really means is, you matter to me so much that I am afraid to become the reason you break. The difference between a man who says, I don't want you, and the man who says, I don't want to hurt you, is the difference between lust and love. The first is empty, the second is heavy. A man who wants nothing from you will not worry about your pain. A man who only wants your body will not weigh the consequences. A man who sees you as a moment will not slow down his desire. It is the man who sees you as a future who panics. The more serious the woman, the more unstable the masculine heart becomes. Because he knows that if he fails, if he makes one wrong move, he won't just lose you, he will lose the version of himself he became in your presence. So before you punish yourself for his distance, before you blame your worth for his retreat, ask this: did he pull away because he didn't care, or because he realized how much he did? And here is the truth that every high-value woman eventually learns. A man's retreat is not a rejection. It is the last breath before he jumps. The ones who never cared never pause. They never warn you. They never explain. They never say, "I don't want to hurt you." They disappear without conscience. But the man whose chest tightens when you cry, the man whose eyes follow you when you walk away, the man who whispers that sentence like a confession, he is not running from you. He is running toward the version of himself that might finally deserve you. And when you stop chasing, when you stop begging for clarity, when you stop losing yourself to decode his fear, something magnificent happens. His panic becomes purpose. Because emotional vulnerability is not triggered by pressure. It is triggered by peace. The feminine energy he falls for is not loud. It is not jealous. It is not frantic. It is not desperate. It is calm, grounded, self-possessed, aware. It does not chase. It invites. It does not demand. It reveals. It does not control. It inspires. And when a man meets a woman who embodies that energy, he realizes something undeniable. She is not the woman he can hurt. She is the woman he will spend his life protecting. There's a moment every woman experiences. Not the first kiss, not the first compliment, not the first "I like you." It's quieter, more dangerous, more intimate. It's the moment he becomes silent. Not the surface, level silence of a man who is bored or distracted, but the silence of a man who has felt too much, too quickly, too deeply. You think silence equals indifference, but in reality, silence is where men process emotion. You see, women speak to understand. Men retreat to understand. A woman cries, talks to her friends, journals. A man goes still. He disappears into the cave inside his mind, not because he wants to be alone, but because he must reassemble himself before returning to you. You felt abandoned. He felt overwhelmed. You thought you were not enough. He thought he might become too much. When he is unsure, your softness terrifies him. When he is insecure, your confidence becomes a spotlight on everything he is not. And so he does the one thing that makes you question everything. He goes quiet. You go to bed replaying the texts he didn't send. You check your phone with that tiny sting in your chest. You scroll through old conversations like an archaeologist digging for clues. Did I say something wrong? Did the energy shift? Was he pretending this whole time? The feminine mind spirals toward the past. The masculine mind spirals toward the future. Women ask, what did I do to push him away? Men ask, could I carry this into the rest of my life? He is not thinking about Friday night. He is thinking about forever. And forever is not a romantic dream for men. Forever is an obligation, a weight, a commitment not only to you, but to the man he must become in order to keep you. History has never celebrated men for their vulnerability. It celebrated them for their victories. Do you know how Alexander the Great spoke to his closest generals before war? He didn't tell them he was afraid. He paced, silent, jaw clenched, eyes forward. When fear became unbearable, He rode into battle first, not because he was fearless, but because silence was the only language he trusted. The masculine does not talk its fear away, it battles it. Your man is not standing on a battlefield, yet his heart feels like one. He doesn't know how to share what he feels, so he shares nothing at all. And this is where most women break. Because feminine love is expressive. It flows, it spills. It wants to merge, to connect, to soothe. When you care, you communicate. When he cares, he withdraws. That contrast makes you think you are opposites. You are not opposites. You are different survival strategies. Every woman at some point in her life has asked, if he loves me, why doesn't he tell me? Because a man tells you what he thinks he can survive. Not what he fears will destroy him. When he finally stops talking, he is not closing the door. He is standing behind it wondering if it is safe to open. You mistake his absence for emotional starvation. But to him, it is emotional digestion. The heart is food, silence is the stomach. He has to break it down before he can handle it. Look at the letters of Vincent van Gogh. He painted obsessively. Sunflowers, landscapes, star-swirled skies, but his words fell apart. Passion was easier on canvas than on paper. The deeper he felt, the quieter he became. His silence was not emptiness, it was overflow. And that is what happens inside the masculine psyche. Silence is not a void. It is a flood with no exit. Women misunderstand silence because they interpret it through their emotional blueprint. Silence, to a woman, feels like distance. Silence, to a man, feels like safety. You may see him staring at the steering wheel after an argument, eyes fixed on something that isn't you. You think he's shutting you out. He's actually searching for the version of himself that can show up for you. He will not speak until he has an answer. He will not speak until he believes his words will land with the weight he intends. A man does not speak to explore, a man speaks to declare. And declarations require certainty. This is why the feminine grows stronger when it expresses, and the masculine grows stronger when it restrains. A woman says, I need to feel you to know you are real. A man says, I need to rebuild myself before I can be real. You are emotional flame. He is emotional steel. And the more intense your warmth, the more his metal bends. He won't tell you of his bending. He'll simply vanish for a while. You text him, are you okay? He replies, yeah, just tired. You hear, I don't care about you. He means, I'm vulnerable and I don't know how to manage it. A woman often believes men are careless with feelings. But the truth is, men are terrified of mishandling them. Think of Emperor Hadrian of Rome. He built walls, literal walls, across the empire, not because he hated expansion, but because even an empire needs boundaries. When he grieved the death of Antinous, the man he loved most, history recorded something astonishing. He didn't weep in public. He built a city in his memory. Where women express through emotion, men express through legacy. Your silence is tears. His silence is construction. So when he says nothing, when he hides in that distant stare, when he folds inward as if the world has collapsed, he is not rejecting you. He is building the internal scaffolding required to hold you. But here is the trap. When a woman is unsure, she moves closer. When a man is unsure, he moves away. So your instinct becomes pursuit. Your messages get longer. Your tone gets sharper. You ask him, what's wrong? 3 times. You replay every moment from the last 4 days. You burst into analysis because your heart won't leave you alone. But when you chase him during silence, you are not comforting him. You are interrupting the one process that allows him to become the man you need. Men don't solve problems in conversation. They solve them in solitude. If you pierce that solitude, you pierce the part of him that is trying to protect you. He's not ignoring you. He is wrestling the version of himself that doesn't feel worthy of you. Think about the samurai of feudal Japan. Do you know why they meditated in silence before battle? Because emotion is a weapon that needs direction. A warrior who panics loses the fight. A warrior who breathes wins it. Masculine love requires the same discipline. He sees your softness, your laughter, your world, your femininity, and it makes him hope. Hope is the most dangerous emotion a man can feel. Hope makes him imagine a life that isn't guaranteed. Hope makes him think in terms of us. Hope makes him fear failing you. So silence becomes a shield. But here is where feminine energy becomes divine. The woman who does not panic in his silence becomes unforgettable. Not because she plays games, but because she understands something few women understand. Silence is not a demand for more of you. Silence is a request for space to become worthy of you. A high-value woman does not knock on the door of uncertainty. She sits at her table, pours herself tea, and waits for the knock on her door. Men rarely fall in love with the woman who fights for their attention. They fall in love with the woman who respects their transformation. That woman is not noise. She is signal. She does not chase. She magnetizes. Because feminine energy is not weakness. It is gravity. You do not pull the moon toward you. The moon bends because your presence distorts its orbit. When you honor his silence, you teach him how to bring you closer. When you attempt to force connection through panic, you teach him that your love is not safe because your deepest fear is abandonment. His deepest fear is inadequacy. You think silence is abandonment. He experiences silence as self-preservation. Two different internal worlds, one collision of misunderstanding. So how do you meet him without losing yourself? By being the ocean. The ocean never goes looking for the river. It waits, and every river in the world finds its way back to it. Your feminine energy does not demand his presence. It embodies presence itself. Men return to stillness, not storms. Men confess to tenderness, not interrogation. Men open to patience, not panic. You do not soften to make him feel safe. You soften to remain powerful. Remember this, a woman who is centered becomes a mirror. A man who is silent is forced to look at himself. And when he sees himself clearly, all his fears, all his insecurities, all his hopes, he will do what men have done since the beginning of time. He will move toward the thing that feels like home. And that thing is not your words. It is your aura, not your questions, your presence, not your persuasion, your emotional composure, because feminine power is never loud. It is in the way you do not crumble. It is in the way you do not chase. It is in the way you stand still, eyes soft, heart open, saying without words, I am here. I am whole. You may join me when you are ready. And the moment he understands that you will not punish him for processing, that you will not collapse at every breath he takes alone, that you are a woman who does not fear silence. His silence becomes a bridge. His hesitation becomes courage. His distance becomes devotion. And when he finally steps forward, he will not step as the boy who could not speak, but as the man who chose you. Love does not happen when you offer your soul to a man. Love happens when he slowly realizes he cannot replace the presence you give him. He notices it first in the silence, not the dramatic absence, not the punishment of withdrawal, not the game of pretending you're busy. No, the silence that comes from a woman who knows her own value. That silence is not a strategy. It is an energy. You no longer chase. You no longer wait to be chosen. You no longer treat his emotional breadcrumbs as a full meal. You no longer build your identity around whether he texts back. You simply exist in your power, and it terrifies him in the most intoxicating way. Because when a woman is no longer fueled by validation, a man's attraction becomes fueled by curiosity and respect. He asks himself questions he never thought to ask. Why am I thinking about her? Why do I feel unprepared when she walks in the room? Why does my chest tighten when she smiles at someone else? It's because power is louder than need. A man can want many women. A man can crave their bodies, their praise, their attention. Desire means nothing but respect. Respect is rare. Desire can make him chase. Respect makes him stay. That is why the sentence he says, when he is truly falling in love, is never dramatic, never polished, never perfect. It escapes him like breath, like confession. I don't want to lose you. You hear those words and your breath freezes, not because they sound romantic, but because they reveal something he was hiding from himself. A man who says, I don't want to lose you, is not talking about your beauty, your attention, or your body. He is talking about the emotional experience of you. The way your presence transforms his identity. The way he feels more grounded when you speak. The way he notices his own chaos when your peace disappears. It's the energy that cannot be manufactured. Modern dating teaches women to perform, be hotter, be cooler, be harder to get, text less, act busy, mirror his energy, punish him. But performance attracts ego, not devotion. A man falls in love when the mirror breaks. When he stops seeing a reflection of his own ego and starts witnessing the depth of your inner world. Because feminine energy, real feminine energy, is not manipulation. It is receptivity, elegance, boundaries, and emotional sovereignty. You don't scream to be heard. You don't beg to be seen. You simply occupy your space with quiet certainty. And that is why he whispers that sentence like a prayer. I don't want to lose you. It is the sound of a man who suddenly realizes you were never competing for his attention. He was competing for your peace. The women who shaped history did not bend for affection. They bent the world around their purpose. Consider Wu Zichen, the only female emperor in the history of China. She wasn't adored because she chased emperors. She wasn't worshipped because she was the most beautiful. She earned her position through intelligence, strategy, and unshakable self-belief. Even in her youth, she refused to be just another concubine in an emperor's garden. She learned the politics of the court. She mastered the language of influence. She waited, not out of desperation, but out of self-possession. That energy of I know who I am and I know what I'm capable of makes men bend. Not because they are weak, but because they recognize power disguised as softness. A high-value woman never asks for the throne. The throne adjusts to her presence. That is the energetic translation of he is more in love than you think. Because the moment she stopped trying to be adored, the world began to adore her. A man's nervous system is not built for constant praise. It is built for challenge, aspiration, growth. When your identity is built around his attention, he becomes the mountain. When your identity is built around your own life, you become the mountain. And masculine energy is drawn to mountains. Psychology calls it value perception. We want what we fear losing. We respect what we cannot control. We love what we cannot replace. You do not become irreplaceable by being perfect. You become irreplaceable by being rooted in yourself. You don't text him paragraphs when he pulls away. You don't try to fix him. You don't explain your worth. You show it, not with anger, not with ice, not with dramatic ultimatums, but with the most frightening weapon in love, indifference born from self-worth. And that indifference is not coldness, it's clarity. The feminine energy there is a softness in you that does not bend for validation. There is a gentleness that cannot be bought with compliments. There is a moral compass that refuses to trade peace for chaos. This softness is where your power lies. When a woman becomes emotionally sovereign, every man who touches her life is forced to make a choice: rise or disappear. The masculine cannot remain neutral in the presence of feminine radiance. It either evolves or runs. The weak man calls you too much. The mediocre man calls you complicated. The unhealed man calls you intimidating. But the man who is truly falling in love, the one who sees you not as a conquest, but as a catalyst, he whispers, "I want to be better with you. I didn't know love could feel like this. You make me want to try." Those sentences are not flattery. They are identity shifts, because love, real love, doesn't ask a man to admire you. It forces him to confront himself. Why you are voyi, ice, not uninhabitable moch wow you give, it is uninhabitable use tend. Women think they are chosen when they are pleasing. When they mold and shape, when they adjust. When they try to be easy to love. But a queen is not chosen because she is easy to love. She is chosen because she is hard to forget. The most dangerous version of a woman is not the one who punishes, not the one who withdraws, not the one who plays games. It is the woman who says, without rage, without threat, without fear, "If you cannot meet me where I am, I will continue without you." No drama, no explosion. Just a door quietly closing behind her. That is when he looks at himself and sees the truth. He was never competing with other men. He was competing with your destiny. And that is why the one sentence slips through his defenses. "I don't want to lose you." It is not a negotiation. It is not a strategy. It is not a manipulation. It is the emotional confession of a man who understands that the way you lived without him is the reason he fell in love. You do not need him to complete you. You do not need his attention to breathe. You do not need his approval to justify your worth. Your life is already full, your dreams, your friendships, your rituals, your growth, your sacred peace. You are not a blank space waiting to be filled with his affection. You are a universe asking for a traveler brave enough to explore you. And only a certain kind of man can handle that. The kind who does not run from depth. He sees your spiritual gravity. He sees the quiet way you hold yourself. He sees the life you have built, not around him, but around your soul. And suddenly, the chase disappears, the games end, the illusions fall away. He loves you not because you are available, he loves you because you are whole. Phenolesson, when love is real, it does not sound like poetry. It sounds like vulnerability. A man who says, "I don't want to lose you," is not praising you. He is admitting the one truth his ego never wanted to face. Without you, I am less of who I could be. That is not obsession. That is not control. That is not fear of abandonment. That is recognition. Recognition of your value, your softness, your boundaries, your self-respect, your emotional power. The high-value woman does not force him to confess. She does not trap him with tactics. She does not bend herself into a fantasy. She simply holds her crown with both hands and walks forward. And every man who follows must whisper, "I'm not ready to lose this."